Hello, BookTube. It was moderately less cold today. It was still cold, but it was moderately less cold. So I went to the Brattle. I went to the Brattle Bookshop. Those of you who are new to the channel, the Brattle Bookshop is a used bookstore here in Boston. I just love it. It has a very high turnover rate and a big sale lot in addition to the store itself. So you can always find great stuff. Usually always find great stuff, and for very little money. And I did. Today I found an armload of stuff that I wanted to show you. Now, two of the things are fairly huge. These things here. We'll do these first just to get them out of the way. They're two enormous collections of New Yorker cartoons. And they are both, I believe, doubles. They were so dirt cheap that I couldn't pass them up. Because they make great gifts, and because I wasn't sure that they were doubles, and I haven't checked yet, but those are the bulk of the weight. But then all the rest of them are normal book-size things. Starting with a couple of mass-market paperbacks. That is these little non-trade paperbacks that I have sort of been weaning myself off. I've gotten rid of thousands of them. It used to be that this room was almost entirely full of them, and they were everywhere else too. But I don't particularly like reading mass-market paperbacks. I prefer a nice, big, generous trade paperback or an ebook or a hardcover. They have migrated gradually over time to be my least favorite format, even though they are pretty much a perfect piece of technology. But I don't make an ironclad rule or a ban of any kind, especially if I see a mass market that I want. And the first one I want to show you is a mass market from a series. I just love the series. I think it's fantastic. I don't think I've ever read. I think I've read them all, and I don't think I've ever read one that wasn't great. And a lot of them were reissued as trade paperbacks, but in very poor quality. And so it's a choice between being lucky enough to find a little mass market sized hardcover or finding the mass markets themselves. So I grab them when I can. I've had whole libraries of them from time to time, but they also make great gifts to give to people, because they are usually a fantastic one-volume introduction to their subject, whatever it is. And that's the Viking Portable Library. I just love the Viking Portable Library. I think I've written about them. And this one is Theodore Morrison's volume on Chaucer. This is the Viking Portable Chaucer. And the covers of the mass-market paperbacks all look like this. They have the header material, they have an image of the author, and then they have a photo. So the image of the author is inset on a photo. I'm wondering if I have another one I could show you. Yeah. Just to give you an idea of putting them together, this is the Coleridge. You see? So it's I sooner or later I will want them all. I've had them all from time to time. I would love the Viking Portable Gibbon. For instance, there are two. As far as I know, there are two Viking Portable Gibbons. There's the Viking Portable Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, which is the whole massive masterwork of Edward Gibbon in one volume, just the highlights of it. And then the other one is highlights from the Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, but also his autobiography. And there are a bunch of others. There are a bunch of others. All of the Romantic poets, tons and tons of other writers. Shakespeare, Cervantes, Steinbeck, a bunch of people. If I were to go to a used bookstore and I were to see a whole shelf of these things, I would grab them all. But as it is, when I see them, I get them, and I, of course, have Chaucer on the brain. I've been reading a little too much Chaucer instead of stuff that I should be reading, because he is just so good. Now this is Chaucer one step removed, because this is Chaucer in a translation into modern English. The whole volume is modern English, and this particular translator does a good job. Chaucer is most known, of course, in a modernized English version by Neville Coghill for Penguin Classics of the Canterbury Tales. But you find modernized versions all the time. I think now most reprint houses don't reprint modernized translations of Chaucer, except the Neville Coghill. Most of them just correctly assert that it doesn't take that much work on your part as a reader to read Chaucer direct without any translation. And translations tend to remarkably sap the strength of what he's doing, the joy and the playfulness of what he's doing. I tend to agree with that, but this has a lovely introduction, and it'll have lots and lots of stuff that I want anyway. So it was, it's a mass market paperback, but I grabbed it anyway. And this next one is a mass market paperback that I have never seen in any other format. I read this years and years ago, 50 years ago, and loved it, absolutely loved it, and forgot about it. I'm glad that I have it to add to my collection, but I wish that I could find a trade paperback or a hardcover with a dust jacket or something like this. This is The Fossil Monarchies by Edmund Taylor, who was an old deadline journalism hack who, by the time he wrote this book, could not write a boring chapter on any subject, and this is a great subject. This is about the Habsburgs and the Hohenzollerns and the Romanovs. This is about the monarchies that all ended in World War I. Some of them had been around for centuries, and they all ended in World War I, and this is all about them. This is about all their final days. The pathos, even the heroism, the ridiculousness, all of it. It's a fantastic book. One of the things that I love about just finding, dirt cheap, perfect condition, dirt cheap books of any kind at the Brattle or at any other used venue is the sweepstakes of what use you're going to put the book to. Like in all the different ranks of a book that you would find, from something you've never heard of, but that does strike you as interesting, so you're going to take a chance on it because it's dirt cheap, to something that you have heard of, but you've never read, and it interests you enough, so you're going to take a chance on it, to something that you've read once and you vaguely remember and you'd like to try it again to see if you would like it, to something that you've read once but you remember liking and now you want to try it again, to something that you really like and very much want to reread, and then the highest pinnacle, something that you really like that you want to keep. And that would be this. So there are only a couple in this whole thing. Sorry, I want to make sure the bean is not eating something. She's no, she's just being herself. I'm not supposed to mention her without showing her, am I? I got admonished about that. I'm not supposed to reach off camera and mention her without showing her to you. She doesn't change from day to day, so I don't know why you're so insistent on it. They want to see you. They do. Yeah. So anyway, this is a version that I want to keep. Although this is a penguin from the UK. So it'll be well put together, but I don't think this will survive one more reading on my part. Just one reading straight through. So, as much as I love Penguin, I know that I want this book. I'll just have to keep an eye out for it in some more durable format. Then we have a hardcover. Hardcovers are durable. That's their main appeal. This is a tiny little thing. Something I remember well. I remember it's a trifle. I remember reading it and liking it, and this was years and years ago, so I want to reread it. I won't keep it. Very much doubt that I will keep it, but nevertheless, it's David Levitt. It's Florence, A Delicate Case. This is his tiny little love letter to the city of Florence. Right? It's the typical Gore Vidal thing, where he gives a little bit of potted history, most of it wrong, and lots of his own impressions from living there. Mixed in with atmospheric touristy type writing. It's not a hard kind of book to write. Everyone who's ever had a brief to do this has done it in a day. But I really like David Levitt. The Lost Language of Cranes is a fantastic novel. I think he as an object case, his career is fascinating. He hit a rather massive scandal halfway through his career, a rather massive and very high profile case of plagiarism, but didn't derail his career, but still, you have to wonder. It's a might have been scenario, and this is an odd thing. He doesn't even really try to hide in the course of this book how little effort it took him to write. I don't hold that against him at all. I've written things like that myself, but I haven't read it since it came out. This was 2002. So that's almost 20 years. So I'll gladly give it another try. I doubt that I will keep it. But the nice thing about charity gift shops, bargain sales, or the Brattle sale lot is that you're not out of pocket. You don't feel any of that horrible obligation to read and treasure a book. You can just plow right through it. And then this next one is something that you would only see at the Brattle. The Brattle buys everything, and they buy all the time. They always have vans out. They're always collecting from estates, from bookworms who got sick of the look of their collections or who have died. Everywhere. They go everywhere. And you see things at the Brattle you just don't see at any other bookstore. And this is one of those things. A long time ago, the Boston Public Library in the mid-60s had a series of public lectures. There's an ongoing series of public lectures. And some of them were so good that the library made a series of little booklets collecting those lectures. You're never gonna find this stuff anywhere, and I don't even know what the proper name of the series is, but this is one of those. This is a collection of 3 little pieces for that were speeches, that were addresses. It's just called Art and Education. It doesn't have an author or anything. It's just a tiny little volume. It was a symposium held in the Wigan Gallery of the Boston Public Library on May 6, 1966, to celebrate the 25th anniversary of the Albert Wigan collection of prints and drawings as a public collection. And there are a couple of volumes. If I remember, there were 2 or 3 volumes that came out of that symposium. And this one has just the transcripts of speeches. One is Art in a Library by David Little. Another is Sinclair Hitchens writing A New Audience for Our Public Collections. And then the third one, and the best one, the one that I remember loving, is David McCord. It's a piece called On Being a Noticer. And it's all about seeing things, not just in art, but in the world in general. And it's going to be a delight of a half hour, 45 minutes to reread this thing. And I hadn't even thought about it until I went to the Brattle. So that's why I love the place, because I get stuff like that all the time. Then this next one is a novel. It's one of the made-up stories. It's by a fantastic author, someone who is perennially underrated. And it's Barbara Pym. This is A Few Green Leaves. This is the last book that she finished in her lifetime. Some of you will know her name because in the late 1980s, she and Sean the Bookmaniac were a bit of an item. He has championed her on his channel endlessly and wonderfully because she is a fantastic writer. I don't think she ever wrote a bad book. If she were going to write a bad book, if memory serves, I haven't read this book in 30 years, but if memory serves, this would be it. Because it's she never really, in her novels, she never really shies away from the programmatic. She doesn't view that the way the 21st century does, where anything that's programmatic is just necessarily bad. That, of course, is a dumb opinion. and she never held it and never really strays far from the predictable and the programmatic in her books, realizing correctly that the thing that will make them stand out or not in the eye of the reader will be how beautifully and intelligently they're done. Not how incredibly original they are and what kind of sorcerous powers the tattoo has that the kid got at a tattoo parlor or at a carnival when he was a boy or whatever. And this has that we've mentioned this on this channel before, that the woeful author photo. That is our author. She's choke holding a cat who is trying to kill her rather than be filmed on camera. She's in a little village. You see a thatched roof in the background. And this is just a slice of small town village, English village life of a type that's almost, it's stereotypical for reviewers to say that this world is entirely gone. We have another, this world is going to crop up again in this little hall, totally unintentionally. But I have Barbara Pym's The Great Weird Memoir type nonfiction volume by and about her, but I have almost none of her novels. I keep waiting for them to show up in Penguin Classics in just a uniform edition rather than piecemeal at the Brattle Bookshop and wherever. And it never happens. It just never happens. She had an uphill battle in her own life to be estimated at a correctly high level of what kind of thing she was doing in her novels. Some of us saw it right away. And some of those people wrote in the New Yorker and elsewhere that we really should be paying more attention to this author. She's actually excellent. But most people didn't. including the book buying public, and that uphill battle has never changed. So I'm glad she has a champion like Sean. He's very eloquent on the subject, and I just wish that the publishing world were treating her better. I mean, the publishing world obviously has the sentiment, because we on this channel just the other day we got a beautiful new reprint of the short stories of Eudora Welty. There you go. So if you can do that, surely you can do maybe a big omnibus edition. 5 Barbara Pym novels would be wonderful, or something like that. But in the meantime, I'm always happy to find her for $1 and just reread. I'll reread anything by her. And this next one could be the find of the day. This is utterly delightful. How utterly wonderful to find this. And it was the only reason that I found it is because I was free to poke around on the bargain shelves. The bargain carts outside of the Brattle are crammed full of books. They're crammed full. And when it's 25 degrees below 0 Fahrenheit, you don't want to pick at every book. You barely want to be out in the lot at all. You're looking, but you're keeping your hands in your pockets. You're keeping your chin tucked down in your muffler. But when it's a slightly bit less cold, you can actually get down on your haunches and study some of the individual books. I would never have found this. Look at this. Look Again by Michael Wentworth. This is a collection of his pieces on the artwork that is in the Boston Athenaeum. The Boston Athenaeum is an old private lending library here in Boston. I have been a member for well over a century. I've been a member of the Athenaeum for a very long time. That is one of the rooms in the Athenaeum, but there are 5 floors that look just like that. And the art in the Athenaeum is it's strange. It's going to strike the 20th century. It's very strange. There, as you can see, there are no plaques explaining in boring detail what you're seeing. There are also no protections, no glass, no velvet ropes, no nothing like that. Not anywhere in the Athenaeum. You can walk in and brush right by a 100-year-old beautiful statue. The walls are covered in beautiful paintings, and the Athenaeum had a library bulletin that they published regularly, and it covered everything. The library bulletin covered everything, covered all aspects of new acquisitions, new happenings, speeches, authors, and whatnot. But it also had a regular column by Michael in which he wrote about the artwork in the Athenaeum in an unobtrusive way. He knew that the patrons would never be bossy or pedantic about it, but that they might be interested in knowing what this stuff was that was on the walls while they were doing their work. And that's what this is. This is just a collection of his reminiscences, of his inquiries into all the artwork, or not all the artwork, but a lot of the artwork. There's a boy and an eagle. That for the longest time, this was right in the middle of the long table, in the middle of the 5th floor of the Athenaeum, which forever and ever was my very favorite place anywhere in the world. Not just in Boston, but by necessity also elsewhere. Boston is my favorite place, so it stands to reason that my favorite place in all of Boston would be my favorite place in all of the world. The 5th floor of the Athenaeum saw me through some very difficult times, and I fought tooth and nail to keep it the way I found it. I voted against, when a measure was put up to members, I voted against allowing students up there. When a measure was put to members, I voted against having Wi-Fi up there, allowing computers up there. I voted against all of it. I stood athwart the tracks of history crying, "Stop!" It didn't do any good. But there are only a dozen places to sit on the 5th floor of the Athenaeum, and it's just gorgeous. It is as quiet and wonderful a place as you can find, and I loved it. I lived there for a long, long time. I lived there, and there's artwork everywhere. That boy and eagle was on that table where I worked at the Athenaeum on the 5th floor. I don't know where it is right now. The art moves around depending on what people need and what might look good or whatnot. And this is the book. This is the book to have on that. There is a catalog, an actual extensive piece-by-piece catalog, provenance, artist, subject, history of subject, that sort of thing, for everything in the Athenaeum. I think I have it out in the other room. But this is a necessary companion to that. This is someone writing about it with spirit. not just as a conservationist, but as an enthusiast. And I've seen this at the Athenaeum, but I would never encounter it for sale, and now I have a copy. That's wonderful, especially since the Athenaeum is a little bittersweet for me now, as all libraries are, including the Bates Hall at Boston Public Library, which is another one of my favorite places in the world, because I have fallen out of the habit of libraries, and even if I intend to get back into the habit of using the Boston Public Library. It is relatively on my route 3 times a week. That means I can use it. If I have to go out of my way, I won't do it. But I don't have to. It's relatively on my route to use as a library. But in terms of using Bates Hall, in terms of going there with a packed bag and a bunch of work and sitting and working, in terms of going to the Athenaeum and climbing the marble spiral staircase at the back of the building, which also the staircase at the back of the building also has framed artwork all the way up and down it, climbing all the way to the 5th floor and unpacking a bag and setting out what work to do. I don't see myself ever doing that again. I don't think I will ever do. I can't imagine it. I mean, for years and years and years, I had my girls, my 2 dogs, and they, I guess for the 10 years in the middle of their life, they could be left alone. They had each other for company. And that freed me up a little to go to libraries and use them that way. But then they started to get old and slower, and that bothered them. It started to frighten them. And then they started to get sick, and then they started dying. And that ruled out anything like a stay at a library when I can do all of the work that I would do at a library right here. Or wherever I'm living, I could do that. And then that just handed off to having one little dog. I have one little dog now. I don't have more than one dog, so she has no company when I'm not here. And she doesn't like it when I'm not here. She doesn't go crazy. She doesn't cry. She just settles down and goes to sleep. But she much prefers company. And she doesn't have it when I'm not here. And how could I go to Bates Hall, unpack a whole bunch of work, and settle in and enjoy myself knowing that? Hey, baby, I was just talking about you. Hey, baby. Okay, well, maybe she knew that I was talking about her. Anyway, books like this become bittersweet because I will go to the Athenaeum now for events, for speeches and whatnot, but to go at 1 in the afternoon and plan to work on the 5th floor of the Athenaeum until sunset, I can't imagine myself doing that anymore. I don't know. So it's kind of bittersweet. I will treasure books like this all the more. Oh, you're back. What is it, baby? Hi, baby girl. Look at all your fans. I have a few more books to show you. She's stealing the show. This next one, the next book I found is a response to a tragedy. I had a tragedy here in this room, this little book room, this little monk cell, this tiny little thing, 10 feet by 10 feet. You'd look at it and think nothing exciting could ever happen here, but it's a long and tedious story. Last summer, I went most of the summer without even so much as a fan in the window. But then in the dog days of August, first 2 weeks of August, more out of worry for Frida than for myself, I decided, I should have the air conditioning unit in the window, just in case I need it, in case the temperatures soar and it just becomes really uncomfortable for her. And the day that I decided, I'm as impulsive as a tween, and the day that I decided to do that, I had no muscular teenagers at all. I had no access to them. They were blitzed hungover, so they were not around to do any heavy toting and lifting. So I did it myself. I cleared off the space for the window. I opened it up and propped it up because the windows are 100 years old, so they're not fitted or weighted or anything. If you're going to open them, you need to prop them up, or they'll slam down and shatter. and I cleared off all the space, and then I went, to storage, and I uncovered the air conditioner. I dusted it out and used compressed air to clean it out, make sure there were no mice inside it or anything like that. It weighs 1 million pounds. You had to get it out. I had to get it out of there, up the stairs, across the place, and then into the window. And I was grunting and I was cursing in Latin the whole time. And then finally it was done. And I thought, okay, well, it's got to be level. because the process by which an air conditioner cools the air also generates water. And so I thought, this has got to be level. And it looked level to me, booktube, but it was not. It was not. And maybe the boys would have known that. Maybe they would have been able to see it a little more clearly, go outside, go inside, that sort of thing. Maybe I was so tired and achy by then that I didn't feel like really pursuing it. But one way or another, it was a crucial an invisible fraction of an inch off. So while the air conditioner was running, it was steadily filling with a noxious byproduct liquid. And eventually, that just spilled over and ran down the wall, and it flooded, it made a little puddle on the floor. And right where it was that beautiful Better Homes and Gardens gardening guide, that green hardcover that I hauled on this channel a year ago, prefatory to trying to garden the little patch of ground outside Frida's window. I still want to do that. Especially, I'm thinking about it now that the weather is starting to feel like winter won't last forever. So that little patch is cultivatable. But the Better Homes and Gardens book was a total loss. I didn't realize that it was waterlogged until it had already dried and the pages had all stuck together. So there was no way to save it. so I had to just throw it away, which was really, really rotten. I'm still hoping that the Brattle will provide. I'm still hoping that the Brattle will turn up another copy of that same book. It had all sorts of practical advice and charts and graphs and whatnot. And also the person who supplied the full-color photographs of gardens, various plants and whatnot, had a miniature schnauzer who was in a lot of the pictures. So it felt like the perfect gardening book for me to consult. And I consulted it all winter long. But then it was destroyed. And so I don't have a practical gardening guide. So I'm looking at the Brattle. Is this exactly the sort of thing the Brattle will provide? And I didn't find that today, but I did find something close. As you can see, right up there, right at the end of my finger, is Onward and Upward in the Garden by Catherine White, which is it's a series of essays that she did, little whimsical thought pieces about being a gardener. It's not a practical gardening book by any means. And today I took one step closer to getting a practical gardening book along the same lines. This is by Eleanor Perenyi, and it's Green Thoughts, A Writer in the Garden. It's a lovely book. I remember reading this when it came out, when the idea of gardening was as far from my mind as the Andromeda Galaxy. And it's again, a lot like Onward and Upward in the Garden, only it's more practical. It's more... there's a lot more practical advice in here. There is our author in a garden that I will never have. I wouldn't want. I'd be terrified. But the dust jacket says, a writer who gardens is sooner or later going to write a book about the subject. Eleanor Perenyi observes in her foreword. One acquires one's opinions and prejudices, discovers a trick or two, learns to question supposedly expert judgments, reads, saves clippings, and eventually overtaken by a desire to pass it all on. Perhaps America has produced too few writers who garden. In any case, there have not before been a gardening book quite like this one by the distinguished biographer of the composer Liszt. And I remember enjoying this when I first read it, before any thought of gardening crossed my mind. So I found it again for dirt cheap. so this plus I can't use Onward and Upward in the Garden as advice in a garden, but this has plenty of practical advice. So this plus on the back page of every issue of the Vineyard Gazette, the Martha's Vineyard Gazette, the newspaper of Martha's Vineyard, on the back page of that there's the Vineyard Gardener, every single issue, and that also has lots of practical advice. I figure between the two I will glean together enough to start. At least until I find a replacement for that Better Homes and Gardens volume. Then the next one that I want to show you is a biography. It's a big biography. It's tall. It's an slightly oversized paperback, so it isn't the brick that it would be otherwise. And it's this. It's Robert Hendrickson's Rise and Fall of Alexander Hamilton. Taller. Have I got a normal-sized hardcover to show you? No, I don't. How can that be? Well, anyway, it's sort of a placeholder book. He wrote, it's magnificent, but it's a one-volume abridgment of a truly magnificent two-volume biography of Alexander Hamilton that he wrote. And I have had those two volumes at different points in my history as a book collector, I've had those 2 volumes. And it's a rare occasion where a multi-volume biography is, in fact, better than the 1-volume abridgment, even though this was painstakingly done. So this is sort of a placeholder. There are passages in here that I will go back to before the summer is over. I'll be writing a lot about the American Revolution before the summer is over. But it's really a placeholder because I know that what I really want is those 2 hardcovers. The Volume 1 and Volume 2 of the Hendrickson Hamilton biography. That is the Hamilton biography to have above all others, if you can find it. But it's hard to find. And I don't know why I got rid of those volumes. But I saw this, and it was, dirt cheap, so I grabbed it. And then the last one, just to get back to Barbara Pym's England just one last time. This is a weird thing, but it fits my interests. I'm sure that I will gobble it up. And there was also another reason why I got it, as you will see. This is by Arthur Foss, and it is a volume on the Dukes of Britain. This is the handful of dukes in the modern day. What their properties are, what their lineages are, when they got their dukedoms, where they get their money, how they deal with estate taxes, and all that sort of stuff, all the practical stuff, as well as the quote-unquote romance and all. And there's just a handful of subjects, and this author had access to all of them, and I think the subject is just fascinating. And there was also another reason why this duke has suffered quite a bit. If you were at a normal used bookstore, there wasn't the Brattle, where everything's $10 or $12 or something like that, then I would probably have passed on this. But if it's $1, then something like this, I'm going to grab it because this is going to provide me with a couple of hours of intense enjoyment. And there you have it. That was my Brattle trip. I'm not going to hold up the New Yorker volumes because they're enormous, but there's the Dukes of Britain, Hendrickson's 1-volume abridgment of his 2-volume life of Alexander Hamilton, Green Thoughts by a gardener and a seasoned journalist. Look again. How wonderful. The painting, one of the paintings and sculpture curators of the Boston Athenaeum, writing regular thoughts about the art that's around, that's just in the rooms that you walk right by on the way to do whatever you're doing. Then Barbara Pym, this is A Few Green Leaves, one of her last, the last novel that she saw through the presses. Then Art and Education, but that's not really, this is just a collection of three speeches, one of which I really want to reread, but I'll reread all 3 since it's tiny. Then Florence, A Delicate Case by David Levitt, just a standard traveler's memoir about Florence. There are a million of them, just a million of them. Probably this is the tip of the iceberg. Probably somebody had a bunch of those, and I will start to see them at the Brattle, and then I'll just have to decide how many of them I want. It'd be nice if that happened with Venice, but I'll take it with Florence. Then the Fossil Monarchies. This is going to be a delight to read again, even though I think it's going to fall apart when I do. And lastly, the Portable Chaucer. The Viking Portable Chaucer. The Viking Portable books are so enjoyable that I grab them whenever I can, especially when, like this is in perfect condition. I just have to reinforce it a little and it'll last forever. But that isn't actually the end, book 2, because after I was done with the Brattle, and after I came back here, and after I was greeted by my squealing miniature schnauzer, and after we went on a nice long walk in the sunshine, while we were coming back, I ran across another book. And it wasn't in one of those little free libraries that dot the landscape. It was just in a box. Somebody had lugged a box of junk to the end of the sidewalk with a sign saying free. And there were a lot of books, but they were all, dog-eared textbooks, old coding manuals, that sort of stuff. There were a couple of really crappy-looking science fiction novels, but there was also this, Killer in the Rain by Raymond Chandler. It's a collection of Raymond Chandler short stories. And I barely have any Raymond Chandler here. I keep wanting a big fat volume of just a mammoth, another imaginary mammoth, a gigantic Raymond Chandler reading volume. And I don't, if there is such a thing, I'm sure there has been. I have just missed it. So I usually come across these crappy little mass market paperbacks, which in his case feels like the right format to read him. But not only did I find the book, I also found something to annotate it. I found a mechanical pencil. Perfectly good mechanical pencil just sitting on the ground. It wasn't even in the box. That was another part of the walk, was just a pencil This is exactly the kind of thing that I put inside a book when I'm reading it to annotate it. So I've got another one now. So there you go. That was a day of bookish discoveries here. and this video has gone hideously long, but what do? That's the Brattle. I may go back to the Brattle. The weather forecasts right now are predicting that the weather is going to stay bearable for days. I don't know that I believe that. I don't know that I have the courage to. But if it's true, I may go back to the Brattle. I may see what else is there. And if I do, you'll be the first to know. But in the meantime, I will see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.